Welcome to the second part of 4.3, where we continue to learn how to graph rational functions. So in the first part of this lesson, we did steps 1 through 5 of graphing rational functions. In this lesson, we're going to cover the last two steps, which is step 6, doing a sine line, and step 7, actually graphing. So we're going to start with step 6, which is our sine line. Now, a sine line is a number line with signs. Mathematicians are very creative with our names. But particularly when I make this number line, I'm going to put specific numbers on it. The numbers that I put on my sine line are always the numbers for my x-intercepts and my vertical asymptotes. So if I look at this example 1, my x-intercept that we calculated in the last lesson was 1. So I'm going to put 1 on my sine line. And I'm going to put a dot on it to remind me that it's an x-intercept, a point. Then I also put my vertical asymptotes. So I have vertical asymptotes at +3 and -2. Now once again, I'm kind of thinking about this like a number line, so I'm going to put my numbers from least to greatest. So I'm going to put my -2 over here and my 3 over there. And I'm going to put some dashed lines over them to remind myself that those are asymptotes. Now I have all the numbers that I need on my sine line. Now here's the process for creating a sine line. Like I said, a sine line is all about the sign of your answer. Not the answer itself, just the sign of it. There are lots of different ways that you can create sine lines. The way I am teaching you today is actually a new way I've recently learned that's way faster than the way I was originally taught. So when we're doing this sine line, what we're going to do is take our numbers from our sine line and list them over here to the side. Now, what I'm going to do is similar to a number line. So if we think of a number line, I have this number 0. Everything to the right of 0 is positive. Everything to the left of 0 is negative. Right? That's how number lines work. That's what we've learned since elementary school. Well, I'm going to apply that to this line, where for this -2 line, I'm going to look at it as if -2 is my 0. So everything to the left of it is going to be negative, just like a number line. Everything to the right is going to be positive, because that's my 0. I can do the same thing with 1. Here's my 1, that's my 0. So everything to the left is negative. Everything to the right is positive. And then I can do my 3, last one. Here's my 0, it's at 3. So everything to the left is negative. Everything to the right is positive. So I've started creating my sine line. I've got all these signs in place, but now I have to kind of multiply them all together. So I'm going to look right here at my first column. If I look at that first column, first off, I notice 2 negatives will make a positive. And then I have a positive times a negative. So that's going to give me a total negative sign for that section. Now I'm going to look at my next section. I have 2 negatives that will make a positive. And then I have a positive times a positive. So that's going to be a positive section. Next section, I have 2 positives, that'll stay a positive. But then I have a negative, that will turn that section into a negative. And in this last section, I've got 3 positives, so that will turn that section into a positive. So I have my sine line made, and now I need to graph it. So essentially what we're saying, when we're saying negative, negative means below the x-axis. Positive means above the x-axis. So essentially what this is saying is in this section of the graph, so from -2 on, there's that section of the graph that goes with it, my answers should all be below the x-axis. So I'm going to go back to this section of my graph, and I'm going to box below the x-axis, because all those answers should be negative, below the x-axis. Now I look at my next section, between -2 and +1. So that would be between -2, +1, that section. This section is positive, so it should be above the x-axis. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to box above the x-axis from -2 to +1, because that section of my sign line was positive. I can keep going with that. This next section between 1 and 3 was negative, so that's below the x-axis. So between 1 and 3, I'm going to box below the x-axis, negative. And our final section above 3, more than 3, is positive, so that's above the x-axis. So I'm going to go more than 3, box the top half. And that's step 6. That's creating our sign line and drawing and graphing our sign line. So now I'm going to zoom in for step 7, which is actually graphing our function. Whenever we graph these functions, there are 3 things to keep in mind. Number 1, you cannot cross an asymptote. Ever. We do not cross asymptotes. Number 2, I should not leave my boxes, because those boxes came from my sign line. Those are my answers. So my entire graph should stay in my boxes. I should never leave the boxes when I'm graphing. Finally, step 3. You need to go through any points. You need to go through any points. So what I mean by that, these 2 points here. I am going to go through those points. So I'm actually going to use that for a starting place. I know I need to go through those points. Now here's what I'm going to look at. If I have this line right here and I kept this line going straight, let's actually just look left. So if I kept this line going straight to the left, well, that's going to be a problem, because that line will cross my asymptote and leave my box, which is not allowed. So what I'm going to need to do is curve this line up so that it stays in my box and it doesn't cross my asymptote. And I can do the same thing going to the right. If I kept this line going straight this way, it's going to cross an asymptote and leave my box. So what I'm going to do is curve it downward so it stays in my box and doesn't cross the asymptote. And that's the first section of our graph. The next section of our graph is like we learned last chapter with polynomials. We should always have an arrow pointing towards our end behavior circles. So last chapter we had circles and corners for polynomials. This time we have circles to the side, which is something we talked about in the first part of this lesson. And we always need to have arrows pointing to our end behavior circles. Now you'll notice I put this arrow below the x-axis so it could stay in my box. And I put this one above the x-axis so it could stay in my box. Now once again, if I kept this arrow going straight this way, it's going to cross my asymptote and leave my box, which is a no-no. So what I'm going to do is curve it down this way so it stays in my box and it doesn't cross the asymptote. Then I can do the same thing over here with this one. I can't keep going the direction it's going because it will cross my asymptote, leave my box. So what I'm going to do is curve this one up so it stays in my box and it doesn't cross my asymptote. And that's actually our graph. That's it. We're done. So you have officially graphed your very first rational function. In the next video, we'll try finishing graphing the next problem.